Okay, we're going to talk about Demeter, goddess of the grain. She's the mother archetype. Who is Demeter? Demeter is, so you're going to hear me say Demeter and Demeter. Um, the name is pronounced both ways. And usually I try to say Demeter, but sometimes it comes out Demeter. Demeter is the maternal archetype. She represents the maternal instinct fulfilled through pregnancy or through providing physical, psychological, or spiritual nourishment to others. So remember, archetypes are patterns of behavior. This archetype, this pattern, can dictate the course of a woman's life will take, can also predispose her to depression if her need to nurture is rejected or thwarted. She is the mother of Persephone. She's known as the goddess of the grain, also the provider of food. She's an earth goddess. She's also the provider of spiritual sustenance. There's something called the Eleusinian mysteries. I'm not going to talk a lot about them, but you can look them up later if you are interested. She's the most nurturing of all the goddesses. A woman with this archetype really longs to be a mother and will find it very fulfilling and the most important role and function of her life. And this archetype also motivates a person to nurture others. So literally anyone, even if you don't identify as a mother. So this archetype within you can cause you to feel very nurturing towards others, animals, people. This also motivates people to be generous and giving and to find satisfaction as a caregiver and a provider. It's also expressed through the helping professions. So if you feel a calling to be a teacher or a nurse or a counselor, social worker. So it's not restricted to literal motherhood. There's lots of people who aren't mothers who are very, very much Demeter women or people. So the archetype is known for its maternal instinct. So at a biological level, this archetype represents the maternal instinct to become pregnant and have a baby. And this can be a very compelling force. So some women, if they're unconsciously motivated, they might find themselves being accidentally pregnant, becoming accidentally pregnant. If a Demeter archetype is very strong in a woman, she may find herself absolutely unable to have an abortion, which will alter the course of her life. Of course, there's pros and cons to that, obviously. Or if she does have the abortion, she will feel a lot of conflict and inner turmoil. She'll have grief instead of relief. A woman maybe who's an Artemis woman or an Athena woman would feel relieved to not have a baby at a time in her life when it was not a good time. So a Demeter woman, if she has an abortion, she's going to go into feeling a lot of conflict, guilt, grief, etc. And she might actually go through multiple cycles of pregnancy where she's getting accidentally pregnant and then she's in that turmoil, she has an abortion, and then she's very depressed because an archetypal drive, if you thwart it, will often become stronger. And I've actually known a number of women who have had this experience where they've gotten pregnant a number of times and had a number of abortions, and it really causes havoc in the person's psyche. A non-Demeter woman, like an Athena woman, an Artemis woman, even a Hera woman, would have the abortion, feel relief, and then take great care to not get pregnant again. But Demeter women can experience fulfillment of this maternal instinct, even if they foster or adopt, or even if they mother a business, mother a project, or a teacher, for instance, and get to be a mother during the day at work. Demeter is also a food provider because she's the goddess of grain. So Demeter loves feeding others. She loves breastfeeding her own child. If people enjoy her food, she basks in the warmth of feeling like a good mother. This is definitely an archetype that I resonate with, especially in this area. For a lot of my 20s and 30s, I was a baker and baked for people all the time and loved to give, bring my cookies in and pass them around, and people loved the cookies. And it made me feel really nice to be able to share love in that way. Demeter women might also be likely to grow her own food, bake bread, can fruits, and then share that with others. Demeter as an archetype is also a very persistent mother. They refuse to give up when the welfare of their child is involved. And her qualities of stubbornness, patience, and perseverance can actually eventually influence a powerful man or even an institution. So she's not going to give up. She's a very generous mother. She's the most generous of the goddesses. According to the mythology, she gave humanity agriculture and harvest, and again provided the Eleusinian mysteries. They're basically spiritual rites that the Greeks followed. There are many famous religious female leaders that are Demeter-like, including Mother Teresa, Mary Baker Eddy, who was the founder of this religious movement called Christian Science, and Amy Carlson is, this is a newish kind of thing. You can find, I think it's on HBO. There's a new cult documentary, and this woman was the leader of a cult in Crestone, Colorado, and they called her Mother God, and she was very Demeter-like. So a Demeter archetype gives in 3 areas. She is going to meet physical needs. She's going to meet emotional needs and provide understanding. And she's also going to meet spiritual and mental needs, including helping her children. And I put children in quote here because to her, she has not only just biological children, but many people in her life she considers her children. They're people that she feels drawn to nurture. So she can help her children cope with disappointments and grief and seek and find meaning in life. Also, part of Demeter's archetypal pattern is Demeter as a grieving mother. If a woman cannot fulfill the Demeter archetype, she may suffer from a characteristic depression. For example, as a result of infertility, child loss, when her child moves out, or when her job as a surrogate mother ends. She will not experience rage, but she will sink into a profound depression. She will grieve and feel like her life is devoid of meaning and empty. And research has shown that the most profoundly depressed women are those supermother types who have lost their maternal role. And that can include people who aren't literally mothers, but people who've been fired from a job, for instance, or had to quit work in a workplace where they were motherly. Demeter women will say that what they're most proud of is their children. And if a woman becomes depressed or angry or disappointed because her adult children are emotionally or physically distant, she will become a grieving Demeter, obsessed by her sense of loss, and she'll constrict her interests. So her whole world kind of shrinks and her psychological growth stops. And you'll see women in this grieving archetype. You can see it. They have a depressed expression. They're going to have a poor posture in sitting and standing. It's going to look very defeated. They'll sigh a lot, and they'll make the people around them feel defensive, guilty, angry, or helpless. So before I talk about Demeter as a destructive mother, I realize I have not actually talked about the Demeter, a myth, and I want to read to you from the book. So the story of Demeter and Persephone is told in a long hymn to Demeter, it's called, by Homer. And it centers around Demeter's response to the abduction of Persephone, her daughter, by her brother Hades, the god of the underworld. And this myth became the basis for the Eleusinian mysteries, which are the most sacred and important religious rituals of ancient Greece. And they worshipped this way until the end of the 5th century AD, when the sanctuary at Eleusis was destroyed. So Persephone was gathering flowers in a meadow with her companions and was attracted to an astonishingly beautiful Narcissus. As she reached out to pick it, the ground split open before her. From deep within the earth, Hades emerged in his gold chariot, pulled by black horses, grabbed her, and plunged back through the abyss just as swiftly as he had come. Persephone struggled and screamed for help from Zeus, who was her father, but no help came. Demeter heard the echoes of Persephone's cries, and rushed to find her, so she went into a panic. She searched for 9 days and 9 nights for her abducted daughter over the entire land and sea. She did not stop to eat, sleep, or bathe in her frantic search. Another myth adds that when Demeter was fruitlessly searching for her abducted daughter, she was seen and desired by Poseidon, god of the sea, who pursued her. She tried to avoid him by changing herself into a mare and mingling with a herd of horses. Poseidon, not fooled by this disguise, turned himself into a stallion, found her in the midst of the herd, and raped her. So, that's great, huh? At dawn on the 10th day, Demeter met Hecate, goddess of the dark moon and of the crossroads, who suggested that they go together to Helios, god of the sun, who is a nature deity who shared the title god of the sun with Apollo. Helios told them that Hades had kidnapped Persephone and taken her to the underworld to be his unwilling bride. Furthermore, he said that the abduction and rape of Persephone had been sanctioned by Zeus. He told Demeter to stop weeping and accept what had happened. Hades was, after all, not a bad son-in-law. Demeter refused his advice. She now felt outrage and betrayal by Zeus, as well as grief. She withdrew from Mount Olympus, disguised herself as an old woman, and wandered unrecognized through the cities and countryside. One day she reached Eleusis, sat down near the well, and was found by the daughters of Celeus, the ruler of Eleusis. Something about her bearing and her beauty drew them to her. When Demeter told them she was looking for work as a nursemaid, they brought her home to their mother, Metaneira, for they had a late-born, much-loved baby brother named Demophoon. Under Demeter's care, Demophoon grew up like a god. She fed him ambrosia and secretly held him in a fire, which would have made him immortal, had not Metaneira come on the scene and screamed in fear for her son. Demeter reacted with fury, berated Metaneira for her stupidity, and revealed her true identity. On saying that she was Demeter, the goddess changed in size and shape and revealed her divine beauty. Her golden hair fell to her shoulders. Her fragrance and brightness filled the house with light. Now Demeter commanded that a temple be built for her. There she installed herself, sat alone with her grief for her abducted daughters, and refused to function. As a consequence, nothing could grow and nothing could be born. Famine threatened to destroy the human race, depriving the Olympian gods and goddesses of their offerings and sacrifices. Finally, Zeus took notice. First, he sent his messenger Iris to implore Demeter to come back. Then, since Demeter remained unmoved, every Olympian deity in turn came bearing gifts and honors. To each, the furious Demeter made it known that she would not set foot on Mount Olympus or allow anything to grow until Persephone was returned to her. Finally, Zeus responded. He sent Hermes, the messenger god, to Hades, commanding him to bring Persephone back in order that her mother, on seeing her with her own eyes, would abandon her anger. Hermes went to the underworld and found Hades sitting on a couch next to a depressed Persephone. On hearing she was free to go, Persephone rejoiced and jumped up with joy to accompany Hermes. But first, Hades gave her some sweet pomegranate seeds, which she ate. Hermes borrowed Hades' chariot to take Persephone home. The horses quickly flew from underworld to upperworld, stopping in front of the temple where Demeter waited. When she saw them, Demeter came running, her arms outstretched to embrace her daughter, who herself ran with equal joy into her mother's arms. Then Demeter anxiously inquired whether Persephone had eaten anything in the underworld. If she had not, Persephone would have been completely restored to her. But because she had eaten the pomegranate seeds, she would spend 2/3 of the year with Demeter and the remainder of the year in the underworld with Hades. After mother and daughter were reunited, Demeter restored fertility and growth to the earth. She then provided the Eleusinian mysteries. These were awesome religious ceremonies that initiates were forbidden to reveal. Through the mysteries, people gained a reason to live in joy and die without fearing death. Okay, so there's the myth. Okay, so Demeter, the archetype as a destructive mother. So grieving Demeter stops functioning, and then nothing, including her, grows, and famine threatens. So a Demeter woman will do the same. She will become depressed, and she will stop growing herself, and she will let things go in the world around her that she's responsible for. Hera and Artemis are destructive in their rage, but Demeter is destructive by withholding what other people need. So an example of this are mothers who give their children the silent treatment or isolate their children, or caregivers like therapists, for instance, who don't respond to emails or text messages or requests to schedule. Most common are Demeter women who withhold approval as their children become more independent. They experience their child's growing independence as a loss for them, and they feel less needed and rejected, and as a result, are going to become depressed and also angry. So, how to cultivate Demeter? Demeter is an important archetype to have. It's the archetype that helps us to nurture others, take care of ourselves as well. So she's critical. She's critical for survival. So when a woman is beginning to cultivate Demeter just naturally, she may notice pregnant women, babies, and children more often. And Demeter women naturally do this. They're very attuned to the children around them. And pregnant women. They may imagine themselves pregnant. They may imagine themselves having children. They may pick out names for children before they become pregnant. A child, either hers or someone else's child, may pull forth the archetype in a woman. So there could be, a woman could be going through life mostly expressing Artemis or Athena or Hestia or Hera or something else, and she may become pregnant, and that archetype could emerge as a result of that, or she may notice or be a part of a special child's life, maybe a niece or a nephew. When she's motivated by her feelings for the child, whoever child it is, she will actually try to be more patient and persistent, and the archetype is going to grow inside her psyche. Oh, pardon me, I just skipped ahead like a million pages. Okay, going backwards. Okay. So Demeter the woman. Now we're coming out of the archetypal realm, and we're going to try to paint a picture of a person who has a lot of this archetype influencing their psyche. So it's kind of a caricature. So take these qualities and reference them against yourself and reference them against other people, and just know that we're never just one archetype. If some of these things don't resonate with you, then that's because you have a balance in your psyche. So a Demeter woman is maternal, nurturing, supportive, helpful, and giving. She is Lady Bountiful, providing whatever is needed. People might look at her and think of her as an earth mother. She's very solid. She's very dependable, grounded. She does what needs to be done with a mixture of practicality and warmth. She's generous, other-focused, altruistic, and very loyal to individuals and principles. And she's very strong. She's strong-minded. She has strong convictions, and it's very difficult to budge her when something or someone important to her is involved. Baby Hera, or little Hera. You'll find her cradling and feeding her baby dolls, whereas a Hera girl will play with Ken and Barbie together. And a baby Athena may have a collection of historical dolls in a glass case. So she's more interested in the concept of dolls rather than the doll itself. Demeter, the goddess, was the daughter of Rhea and the granddaughter of Gaia, were two other earth goddesses. All of these goddesses had husbands who hurt their children, and they were unable to stop the abuse, but they didn't accept it. Unlike Hera, who her husband abused her children, and she was focused on him and let it happen. And so Demeter, Rhea, and Gaia all persisted until their children were freed. Sometimes real life will parallel this myth when a Demeter woman marries a father who isn't a great dad. So a Demeter woman might marry a patriarchal man who's actually not that interested in being a father. And if this happens, the daughter will grow up identified with the mother and feel really disconnected to the father. The father's attitude might be disinterested or competitive or even abusive if he perceives the kids to be rivals for affection or attention from his wife. In this kind of household, Demeter will grow up with a poor sense of self-esteem where she might feel like a victim, or she may compensate by mothering her parents to get her needs met, and also her younger siblings. If she has an affectionate or approving father, she will generally see men positively and have good expectations of a husband. Hera in adolescence and early adulthood. So hormones at puberty might actually kickstart a girl's Demeter archetype. If her life feels empty and she is also a neglected child, she may actually be happy to become pregnant as a teen mother in order to have someone that she can love and be loved by. Most Demeter girls don't get pregnant because they may not have Hera's desire for a mate influencing them yet, or also may not have developed any Aphrodite. But they may marry young, or they may go off to college and start working in a helping profession. They're not usually very ambitious, intellectual, or competitive if they don't have Athena in them or Artemis. Status is not important to her at all. It's important to Athena, it's important to Hera, but not to her. She tends to choose her friends across a very wide social and racial range, and she will go out of her way to put people at ease. She does not like to see people suffer. Demeter, when she's older and she's at work, she's going to be predisposed by her maternal nature to enter nurturing or helping professions. She has a lot of empathy, and so she's drawn to places where people are in need. She's drawn towards traditionally feminine jobs, such as teaching or social work or nursing. When she's able to help someone grow or get well, it's very satisfying to her. And in a lot of ways, I think of it as a solution to her empathy problem. So if someone around her is suffering, helping that person feel better or grow takes care of her empathy problem. Some Demeter women become important figures in organizations that receive her maternal energy. So she may mother a job, mother an organization. And this can be hard because they'll put all of their energy into these organizations and there'll be nothing left for anything else. And they'll often end up in therapy because of this, because they have poured themselves into this work. If they are in leadership, it can be really hard for her to be a leader because within herself, she feels conflicted if she needs to fire or confront someone who's not doing their job well, because she'll feel sorry for them or guilty about causing them any pain, probably while all feeling pretty resentful inside. Employees will expect her to look after them because she does look after them. And they don't have this expectation of male supervisors. And they'll feel angry and resentful when she does not take care of them as she has been. Demeter and other women, she's not competitive with other women about men or accomplishments. She's not very competitive at all. Any envy or jealousy that she has will be about kids. So whether or not she's had kids, if other women have kids and she doesn't have kids, she'll have jealousy about that. If she's older and another woman has kids who are still living in her home or living close, she'll be jealous about that. She'll also be jealous if other women have better relationships with their kids than she does. She's going to have mixed feelings about feminism. She might not like that feminists devalue the role of motherhood or minimize it. She might actually want to be a full-time mom and feel pressure societally or financially to work instead. But she also very strongly supports women's issues like protecting children, battered women. She will have very solid friendships with other Demeter women. And she may rely on her friends more than her own husband for emotional support as well as tangible help. And we'll get to the reasons why she may rely more on friends than her husband in a little bit, because we're going to talk about what kinds of men are typically attracted to her. Mothers and daughters who are both Demeter women will remain close, and those families where they have these really tight mothers and daughters will kind of have a matriarchal energy to them. Sometimes the two friends, there may be a one friend who takes on a Demeter role, and she'll have a Persephone friend who's younger or less experienced or maybe indecisive in some way. I know that was something I noticed with my own mother. She had a lot of younger, less experienced friends. And for myself also, I tend to collect people who look to me for support and advice. Sometimes two women who are Demeter women will take turns mothering each other or just being playful Persephones together. And here's a little nuance for lesbian relationships. Sometimes there'll be an older Demeter woman who'll be paired up with a younger Persephone woman. And the Demeter woman's happiness will depend on how well that relationship is going. And she may be possessive. She might want the younger woman to be dependent on her, and there'll be kind of exclusiveness in the relationship, which will actually end up harming the relationship. A Persephone woman, we'll get to her not this coming week because this coming week is Christmas, but the week after that, we'll talk about her. A Persephone woman has a young and undifferentiated personality. She's going to be a receptive, very feminine woman, and she might have pretty malleable sexual preferences. She might be bi, she might be poly, and she might leave her Demeter lover for a man. And to a Demeter lesbian, that would be extremely devastating loss. It would be just like Hades had come to take her daughter away. Okay, so Demeter with men. Motherly women attract men who feel an affinity for maternal women. Demeter women, this is a funny thing. I really relate to this point. Demeter women do not really do the choosing. So she's not deciding who it is she's going to date. She's going to respond to a man's need for her. And she might even end up with a man because she feels sorry for him. And that happened many times in my life, unfortunately. They don't have high expectations of men. They think of men as little boys, and they might even infantilize them or treat them like babies. So there are 4 types of men who are going to be attracted to a Demeter woman. The first type, the first pattern is a Demeter woman married to a son/lover. So this is someone she treats like a son, and he happens to be a lover. There's a lot of mixed weirdness there. Usually he is a talented and sensitive man who feels unappreciated or misunderstood by others, who do not value his specialness like she does, and who won't overlook his irresponsibility as she will. This is a man with something called a puer complex. Puer is a word in Latin that means divine child, little boy. Basically, it's an immature, self-absorbed boy man who feels that he is special. Peter Pan is another word for this. She will repeatedly overlook behavior towards her that others see as selfish and thoughtless. And so she'll hear feedback from people like, why are you tolerating that? Why are you putting up with that? And she will, because of her empathy, because of her tendency to be drawn to people's need for her, she will overlook it. She'll have pity for him, basically. She'll think that the world is unkind, that it should make exceptions for him as she does, and she forgives way too easily. She might be in awe of his appearance or his talents, and she might enjoy spoiling him rotten. Type 2, the sociopath. Okay, sociopaths are people who lack empathy, lack capacity for emotional intimacy or appreciation, and so they're very drawn to people that they can use. So her maternal qualities and the inability to say no will make her very vulnerable to this kind of person. They lack the ability to love, be loyal, or feel remorse. And he'll act on the assumption that his needs entitle him to receive. He's not capable of emotional intimacy, can't appreciate her. He always is having the attitude of, what else can I get from you? What have you done for me lately? So he forgets the past generosity that she's given him and all the sacrifices she's made. And also he'll forget his past bad behavior. And so he will magnify his need. He'll make himself more needy. He'll be more pitiful, basically. And the more pitiful and needy that he is, the more she will respond to him, provide for him, and give to him. So this relationship, if she has one, might tie up her entire life, because Demeter women do not abandon their children, and it might drain her financially. Type 3 is an Oedipus. Oedipus complex is basically something Freud invented, thought up, to describe a man who has a passion for his mother, has a projection of perfect woman on his mother. So another typical Demeter mate is a man who wants to marry a girl just like the girl who married dear old dad. So when he was little, he might have wanted to marry his mother. But now as a grown man, he's looking for a very maternal woman who will be a good mother to him. He wants someone to be warm and loving, responsive, nurturing, who will caretake for him, cook for him, buy his clothes, wash and iron them, make sure he goes to the dentist, take care of his social life, make plans for him, buy his birthday or Christmas presents for his side of the family, do all the things that moms do traditionally. And type 4 is the family man. So this kind of man is mature and generous. He also wants to have a family. And instead of wanting to take advantage of her, he sees in her a partner that wants what he wants. He's a good father, but he also is responsive and looking out for her. And he can actually help her to say no to people who want to take advantage of her. This man will help her fulfill herself through bearing children. The other types are threatened by children, and they will often ask her to not have babies. They'll want her to get an abortion, which will put her into a maternal crisis, which she either has to reject the man that she's mothering or reject motherhood itself. I mean, obviously the worst case scenario of this is probably going to be type 2, the sociopath, but type 1 and type 3 will also have resistance to her giving attention to someone else. So sex and marriage for her, sex is not very important to her. She's more likely someone who wants to cuddle than have sex. She's very warm, affectionate. She's very feminine. But she sometimes can have a puritanical attitude towards sex, that it's for making babies and not for pleasure, or even that sex is for providing a need to her husband and not something for her. Some Demeter women will have a guilty secret that their most sensual physical act is actually breastfeeding their babies and not having sex with their husbands. Marriage is not an overwhelming priority to her. She will have a child out of wedlock, but they often want to get married in order to have their kids in the best situation possible. Dual income household, things like that. So Demeter as a mother, she feels a very deep need to be a biological mother. She wants to give birth to and nurse her very own child. She wants to give birth, and I'm going to put this in quotes, naturally. If possible, she'd like to have a vaginal birth. Having a C-section sometimes can be very disturbing to a Demeter woman. She may also be a loving foster mother or an adoptive mother, but if she can't have her own biological child, she might have this deep unmet longing and feel barren. An Artemis woman or an Athena woman or even a Hestia woman are fine with having a ready-made family. They're fine with surrogacy. They're fine with adopting. They're also fine with marrying into a man who already has a family. A Hera woman probably wouldn't like that because she wouldn't want the competition for attention. They see themselves as good mothers with the best interests of their children in mind. So from the perspective of the child, because that's important, they're usually very, very good moms or terrible, smothering, devouring, all-consuming mothers. There's kind of a spectrum here. When adult children resent her, a Demeter woman will be very confused and deeply wounded because she's going to have a hard time seeing how she could have contributed to her child's difficulty. She's only aware and paying attention to her good intentions, and it's very hard for her to see her own negative elements, the shadow of herself and her behaviors. Whether she has a positive effect or a negative effect depends on if she's like Demeter before the mythological abduction or after. So if you remember in the myth, before the abduction, Demeter's happy, Persephone's out in the field picking flowers. She trusts that all is well. She's going about her activities. She's not worried. But after the abduction, she's angry, she's depressed, and she can't function. So if a woman is kind of frozen or caught up in the after phase, anyone her child leaves home to live with will be considered an abducting Hades. So she's not going to like literally anybody that her child dates and gets married to. She's going to have resistance to that or hurt feelings about it at the very least. Unlike an Athena mom, for instance, who would be very proud and happy that her child had made it to that level of success in relationship. Same with Hera. A Hera woman would be happy and proud, especially to see her daughter getting married, because marriage is like the epitome of success for a woman. A Demeter woman is always afraid that something bad is going to happen, that she's fearing this imminent abduction. This is the woman who's always counseling and coaching her child repeatedly on like what to do if a stranger talks to you, and don't go there because I can't be there to watch you. And she's extremely overprotective. Of course, some protection is absolutely necessary, but I'm talking about the extreme end of that. They will limit their child's independence, and they'll discourage the formation of relationships with others. This can include so many things. This can include things like not teaching their child how to do their own laundry, not teaching their child how to cut their own food, not allowing their children when they're of the age to drive to get their license, limiting how much time that they spend out of the house, making when a child gets older into their teen years, making it so that the child feels guilty or bad about wanting to be social and do things with friends on the weekends, all because they're fearing the loss of affection. And if something bad does happen to the child, say the child does have an injury or something terrible happens, they feel incredibly guilty and they become even more over controlling and protective because, life has proven true. Something bad did happen, and it becomes this vicious cycle. She's going to expect herself to be perfect. So there's a lot of perfectionism in Demeter women. She expects herself to be all-knowing, all-powerful, capable of foreseeing events and protecting her child from all pain. So just remember, this isn't just Demeter women who have children. Literally, this is also Demeter women who are therapists, who are teachers, who are coworkers, and they see other people, they treat other people as if they are their child. So she's going to be perfectionistic in all of these relationships. She may become over controlling. She could hover. She might intercede inappropriately on a child's behalf, taking over whenever there's a possibility of harm. This is your helicopter mom. And so then the negative side effect of this, obviously, the negative outcome is that the child is then dependent on her to deal with people. This is the child that doesn't want to talk on the phone, that doesn't want to leave home to go to college, things like that. A child of a Demeter woman may stay close to her forever with a psychological umbilical cord still intact. They are dominated by her personality and remain mama's boys or mama's girls into adulthood. Some never marry, or if they do, they place a higher importance on their mother and their family than their spouse and the relationships within their own home. Some children of Demeter women, in order to be able to have their own life, they will break away and stay away. So they may move far away from their parents. They may just create an emotional distance by not being as much in contact with that person. And they'll often do so because their mother has unconsciously made them feel like they owed something to them, made them feel guilty or bad about being independent, or made them feel so dependent that they don't want to be dependent anymore, so they have to kind of break away forcefully. Some Demeter mothers also cannot say no to their children, so she's going to see herself as capable, selfless, bountiful, who can give and give and give. And so she'll give her children everything they want and make all kinds of sacrifices to get it. And if she can't get it for them, whatever it is they want, or whatever it is they need, she will feel terrible about it. So she's going to fail to set limits on behavior, and her kids will grow up feeling entitled to special consideration, not very prepared to conform with the outside world, and they may even have conflicts with authority and have a really hard time taking direction from others. Hera, I wrote Hera. It's Demeter. Demeter in the middle years. If she doesn't have a child, she may be preoccupied with her biological clock. So she's aware of her children growing older, and every step they take towards independence tests her ability to let go of their dependence on her. She may feel an urge to have a late life baby, which may prevent her from growing into other archetypes, because then she's starting the cycle all over again. A founding mother of an organization may face a crisis if it becomes big enough for others to want her position and power. So unless she has some Athena in her, she's not going to be able to play these political games very well, and she may have her position taken from her. Overall, the middle years is a time in her life in which she should consider what is missing in her life and what she may do to fulfill herself. So if she doesn't do this, we're going to see in the next slide what happens. But it's a perfect time for women, as their children get more and more independent, to start thinking about, how can I grow? What areas of my life? Where do I want to start next? What do I want to try next? Maybe develop some Artemis, maybe develop some Athena, go back to school, or learn something new. So there are two I said Hera again. Whoops. Demeter in the later years. Okay. So they fall into two categories. The first category, they may find later life very rewarding. They may be active and busy women who've learned from life and are appreciated by others for their down-to-earth wisdom and generosity. They may have learned how to let people go. They may have learned to foster the independence of others. And they may have learned how to have relationships with people in which there's mutual respect. They also, category 2, may consider themselves victims. So the source of their happiness are all of these disappointments and unfulfilled expectations, mainly of people they consider to be children who have not stayed with them, have not mothered them in return. And so they're going to grow more bitter with age. So Demeter's psychological difficulties. So identification with Demeter, that's the first part of this. She's going to act, a Demeter woman will act like a bountiful maternal goddess with an unlimited capacity to provide, which is a problem because she's a human, not a goddess. She can't say no if someone needs her attention or her help. And so this is going to make her do things she'd rather not do and give up her free time. So the instinct to nurse, to take care, to be maternal, can eventually deplete a woman in a helping profession and can lead to burnout symptoms, including autoimmune conditions. This is really common. If you ask a person with an autoimmune condition how much time they spend caregiving others, it's pretty weird how that's like archetypally so related to people who have these kinds of conditions like Hashimoto's, things like that. She will overcommit herself. She's not an unlimited resource, even if others and the Demeter within her expect her to be so. So a Demeter woman must confront the goddess time and time again if she is to live her own life rather than a life prescribed by Demeter. Instead of instinctually just saying yes to everyone, she has to choose consciously when and how and to whom to give. So she has to learn to say no both to a person who needs something from her, and she has to learn how to let it go and not feel too guilty about it. And she has to also learn how to say no to Demeter, the goddess within her. The maternal instinct. So a Demeter woman may not be able to say no to getting pregnant because being a woman is like an inner imperative for her. It's like an inner drive that's very strong. So a Demeter woman may unconsciously collude with the archetype and forget when she's fertile, or she might be careless when taking her birth control pills. She might have a partner who's colluding with the archetype too. Obviously, it takes two to tango, right? And she may find herself pregnant when circumstances aren't ideal. So she must resist the archetype by being vigilant about birth control, because the Demeter within has no concerns about the realities of life or timing. Demeter, the archetype, does not care if it's not a good time for you to be pregnant. Some of the common body issues for Demeter women include fatigue, headaches, cramps, high blood pressure, ulcer symptoms, and ulcer symptoms are like nausea, heartburn, and back pain. These are all common in Demeter women who struggle to say no. And they also struggle with expressing anger when they're overworked or overloaded with responsibility. So what happens is they get a chronic low-grade depression. So I forget where I heard this, but someone said that depression is really suppression. It's suppression of grief and suppression of anger. So these symptoms are expressions of chronic low-grade depression that results when a woman can't protest effectively. She can't say, no, I don't want to do that. If she also represses her anger, and if she resents the situation of Demeter's making. So she resents something that she's done to herself, basically, through the archetype of Demeter. A Demeter woman will also, went too far. A Demeter woman is also going to foster dependency in the people around her. And this is one of the biggest problems that I see in the archetypal pattern. She really wants her child to need her. And she has a lot of anxiety when her child's not there with her. So she will try to foster dependency in order to keep her kids or anyone she considers a child close. And such a woman infantilizes others by her attempts to be indispensable or over controlling, which creates feelings of insecurity and inadequacy in the other woman. So in a literal mother role, this could look like, you're cooking with your kid and you're watching and you're fixing all the mistakes and you're finishing it up yourself, which sends the message to your child that, how you do it is not good enough and I have to be here to get it done right. I see this a lot in body workers, actually, chiropractors, massage therapists, all kinds of therapists who don't want their clients to leave them because they are attached to their role as therapists and or they need that person for financial stability. And so they'll unconsciously create a feeling of inadequacy and that they'll kind of play up the neediness. They'll play up like the person's own, like the therapist will say, I'm the one who knows what to do next. So you have to kind of return to me to get the next step of your care. They don't encourage people to do their own research. They don't typically encourage people to see other providers. This is a woman or man who is going to try to, instead of referring out, they'll try to meet all of the needs of that person themselves. And they'll go to all these different continuing education classes in order to be able to be as thorough a practitioner as possible. And this is a super big problem in the bodywork field. And I was a part of this. I took all kinds of classes because I thought, I don't want my clients to have to go outside of my room to get what they need. And that is actually really harmful to people. Okay, so at work, it's the same. She's the supervisor, the editor, the mentor. She knows best. She knows how the work should be done. And so what that does in a work environment is that it stifles originality and self-confidence, and it ends up making her have to work harder. If the people in her life need her, an anxious Demeter woman will feel happy and secure. If they feel independent and competent, then she's going to feel threatened. So often to stay in her good graces and be in the inner circle and be the recipient of her care and concern, it requires you to have to stay in a dependent role. And so whether a Demeter woman fosters dependency or creates a sense of security depends on whether she feels a sense of bountifulness or scarcity. If she's afraid she's going to lose the other person or that her child is not good enough, she will become possessive, controlling, constricting, hovering, and smothering. Possessive Demeter women grow when they learn to let go of their need to keep other people dependent on them. Okay, passive aggressive behavior. So because a Demeter woman gets overburdened from not being able to say no, she may become depleted and apathetic. Apathetic means like lacking energy, lacking care. Or she could be resentful and really angry. If she feels used or exploited, she typically won't express it directly because she's not a very assertive woman. She's typically kind of more mild. And so she's also going to feel guilt. So she's going to internalize it and discount her own feelings as ungenerous and just work harder. But when she suppresses her real feelings, she begins to show passive aggressive behavior. For instance, she might miss a deadline at work. She might show up late. She might not pick up something she agreed to pick up. She will break promises over and over. And she'll drop the burdens she was expected to carry, unconsciously acting out her hostility with non-compliant behavior and indirectly expressing her resentment and asserting her independence. So it's sort of the attitude of, I didn't want to do this to begin with. I don't know why I agreed to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. And you can't make me. That's the kind of inner attitude. It would be better for her to just say no, because passive aggressive behavior makes her seem incompetent and she also feels guilty. And then she has to do more later to kind of get over the guilt. So she ends up just putting herself, it's a never-ending cycle, basically. Instead, a Demeter woman should clearly refuse to do what someone else expects and state why. It's a clear message, and passive-aggressive behavior is a muddled message encoded in a hostile act. It just feels yucky when someone's passive-aggressive because it's not a person on the receiving end of that is confused. If the other person cares about your needs, a clear statement is enough. But if the other person is exploitative, then you'll have to back the statement up with action. So you can consider following Demeter's example, the goddess, and just simply refuse to function as you have been if the person's being exploitative. Another major issue for Demeter is depression and the empty nest depression. So when a Demeter woman loses a relationship in which she has been the maternal figure, she not only loses that relationship and misses the person, but she loses her mother role, which gave her a sense of power, importance, and meaning. And so people call this empty nest depression. At the extreme, a Demeter woman may not be able to function or function well. So she can either become unable to sleep, agitated, and they call this agitated depression, or she might become withdrawn, unmoving, unresponsive, and everything looks bleak and barren to her, a world devoid of meaning. And they call this apathetic depression. Underneath both of these forms of depression, hostility is present. She's angry that a source of meaning has been taken from her. She feels victimized by it. So there's 4 ways to prevent this, to work with this. Number 1, learn how to express anger rather than bottling it up. 2, learn how to say no, which helps avoid getting depleted and depressed from being overextended and feeling unappreciated and martyred. 3, learn how to let go, which spares you the pain of having your children resent you and need to break away from you. And 4, develop other goddesses which provide you with additional interests. So, ways to grow. Demeter women find it very easy to recognize the maternal pattern that they embody, including the difficulty saying no. So they know they're mothering people. They know they struggle to say no. But what they have a blind spot about is their negative feelings, including the anger and resentment, and their negative behaviors. So like the inability to let people do things independently, for example. They have good intentions and they need to see themselves as good mothers. So they block their receptiveness to insights. They're very defensive and they reply to any criticism with statements regarding their good intent or with a list of their good actions. Like, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. Or, oh, I'm just a terrible mother, I guess. Or, well, look at all the things that I've done for you. This is the kind of thing you'll hear from a Demeter woman. She will resist acknowledging her anger at those she loves and will deny the possibility that she's being passive-aggressive, over-controlling, or fostering dependency. She can admit disappointment at not being appreciated and feeling depressed, though. That part is easy for her. So acknowledging these negative traits is the hardest for her, but once she's able to do that, changing her behavior is thankfully much easier for her to do. So more ways for her to grow. She can become her own good mother. So she needs to learn how to employ Demeter on her own behalf instead of instinctually responding to others. She can learn to focus on herself, the concern that she has for others. She can ask herself, do I really want to do this right now? Do I have the time and energy for this? And also it's important as a Demeter woman to consider, like, if you have the time to do it now, that's great, but think about it in the future. Think about how long the task will take, if it's going to take multiple days, and just be aware of that. When she's treated badly, she needs to reassure herself that she deserves better and tell others of her needs. To expand beyond Demeter, Demeter women need to consciously make room for other Demeter relationships. So she needs to think about other ways of being in relationship rather than mothering someone. For example, She can explore the Hera archetype and go away with her husband without the kids. She can do some Hestia thing or Artemis thing and do something on her own. She can go out in nature on her own. She can meditate or do something spiritual, but she does need to find things to do that don't deplete her energy. She needs to learn how to recover from depression. Some women get stuck in their very real experience of loss, and their existence remains empty, bitter, and barren. And there's two ways to recover from this, as the myth suggests. So I'm going to read them to you. Read the little sections on this. First, after she knew that Persephone had been abducted, Demeter left Mount Olympus to wander on earth. At Eleusis, the depressed and grieving goddess was welcomed into a household where she became the nursemaid of Demophoon. She fed him nectar and ambrosia and would have made him into an immortal had his mother Metanira not interrupted. Thus she coped with her loss by loving and caring for someone else. Risking another relationship is one way for a grieving Demeter woman to recover and function again. Second solution, there can be a reunion with Persephone. So the grieving mother was reunited with her eternally maiden daughter and ceased being depressed, functioned again as grain and fruit goddess, and restored fertility and growth to the earth. Metaphorically, this is what ends a depression. The archetype of youth returns. How it happens often seems mysterious. It follows weeping and rage. Time passes. Then a budding feeling stirs. Perhaps the woman notices what a beautiful blue the sky is, or she is touched by someone's compassion, or she has the urge to complete a long abandoned task. Emotionally, there are small signs of spring. Shortly after the first signs of returning life, the woman is herself again. Once more, full of vitality and generosity, reunited with that part of herself that had been missing. More than simple recovery is possible. The Demeter woman can also emerge from a period of suffering with greater wisdom and spiritual understanding. As an inner experience, the myth of Demeter and Persephone speaks of a capacity to grow through suffering. A Demeter woman may then, like Demeter herself, come to accept the existence of human seasonal changes. She may acquire an earth wisdom that mirrors nature. Such a woman learns that she can live through whatever happens, knowing that just as spring follows winter, so changing human experience follows certain patterns. Okay. So I'm going to end the recording if I can, because I want everyone to be able to share.